Hello, how are you? My name is Yuchen. Welcome to another bookmaking tutorial. I'm not at my studio today because instead of a new binding technique, I want to take some time to make a point. I usually talk about this at the very beginning of my workshops in the past, but now it's not too late. I want to talk about why do we make books by hand. You can consider this a motivational speech. I think artist books can be seen as a spectrum. At one end, it will be $5, $10 zines, cheaply produced and democratically distributed, while the other end being something more elaborate, more complicated in the making, and thereby limited and expensive. I have some examples. What is cheap art is published by Bread and Puppet. It's $2, and it's basically a manifesto on how art is a necessity, essential to everybody, thereby it should be affordable to everybody. Another zine that I have in hand is by Wen Ling. He's a comic artist. He printed them at home on copy machine, and he sells them for less than $8 each. The other end of the spectrum, I don't have actual books, but I have some images. I think Jazz by Matisse is a very classical example. I've seen it once at MoMA. It's desirable. It's edition of 270, each signed and numbered. Another example I want to show you is by Rauschenberg. It's called Shades. So from the aluminum framework, plexiglass sheets, and transferred pre-printed images, he made an object in which the individual plexiglass pages could be moved directionally and sequentially by the viewer. So you can consider it a sculpture that adopted the movement and logic of a book. I think Printed Matter showcases the full spectrum of artist's book, but clearly we are more enthusiastic about this end. I think the democratic implication in the multiplicity of book form was a really important reason why conceptualism artists such as Solowitt, Lucy Lepart, among many others, chose book form over other art form, about which I've talked more in another video on Solowitt. And that is the reason why in our open submission policy, we ask for the book to have a edition size over 100 or open edition. It's not that we need to sell 100 copies, but ideologically, we don't want to take books that's too expensive or precious as a object. However, if we make them by hand, they will be precious, and we can make that money no matter how hard we exploit ourselves. I've been experiencing this dilemma. Of course, I want my works to be accessible, to circulate widely beyond the art world, but I just don't have the budget to place an order for 20,000 copies in a factory, at least not yet. And I don't think this should stop us from making or at least experimenting with book form. I think the workshops, the tutorials, all of these practice are not to limit us to a certain type of artist or a certain flow of production, but to equip us with this bodily knowledge that can only be acquired through tactile experience. In making a book, truly understand its structure from within and profoundly about its conceptual and metaphorical potentials. And I think it is also the most attractive traits of artist books. I think compared to other art forms. When you're appreciating a painting or a sculpture, you are not encouraged to touch them. But with a book, you have to have this physical interaction, thereby how the paper feels, how heavy it is, how far away it is from your eyes, and how you're gonna hold it, how fast it moves. All of this material-based experience and decisions are crucial to the delivery of your content. You can think of it as the shape of a wine glass and the taste of wine, or the weather where the grape grew and the experience of drinking. Even though it's an ambience, but it's so important. And even if one day, I hope we do have that access to a much larger scale production in a factory, I think this experience of making books by hand can inform us to be better customers, to know all the options and the meanings of those options. I always believed that hands and heart can be each other's teacher, meaning when we create, it's never the concept that dictates the material making, nor the craft leads this process solely, but always a receptory and dynamic dance. So consider this an invitation. Learning something new by your hand can rewire how you think, even though just a little bit at a time, but it's not unlike learning a new language. At the same time, whenever we're learning a new craft, if we can use that to serve our agenda, to express our content, for me, it's always the most efficient and memorable way to digest and to really own the new skill. So if you haven't yet, I want to invite you to participate and really make with me. And you can start with one sheet of paper and you can share with us what you've made. That's all I want to talk about today. Maybe I'll see you again. There's a donation link in the text part. If that's something you can afford to, please consider making a donation. To Print Matter, it will be greatly appreciated. Thank you. Take care.